welcome back to another episode of the pod. I'm your host, Dustin Anglum, and today we have something pretty special lined up. There has been a new occurrence that's happened that's affecting buyers, sellers, and pretty much everyone in the real estate industry, and we'll be bringing our co-owner, Miss Stephanie Cox, in to kind of talk about all this.
Hi. Well, thanks for having me, Dustin.
Of course.
Glad to be here.
So you may have heard about some of the recent changes that's happening in the real estate industry, mainly affecting our buyers with our Buyer Brokerage Agreements. This can sound a little bit intimidating at first, but we are here to kind of break it down and ease some of those tensions to try and clear some things up and make it transparent. So Stephanie, can you start by explaining what a Buyer Brokerage Agreement is?
Sure. So a Buyer's Brokerage Agreement is literally nothing new. We've been using them for quite some time. It's just a legal binding contract between the buyer and their agent. It outlines expectations, job duties, what exactly is that agent going to do for that buyer. It's definitely negotiable. It has term limits. So, whether you want an agent just to represent you for, throughout the process of trying to find a property, or whether you want that agent just to represent you for a specific property.
So Stephanie, could you kind of go into a little bit of detail how this all started and who all it's going to affect?
Sure. So back in March, there was a settlement, and after that, NAR implemented some changes. NAR meaning National Association of Realtors. So we are all required, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what office you go to, we are all required to sit down and have an upfront conversation with buyers now and get this Buyer's Brokerage Agreement signed. Like I said, it's a legally binding contract. So there's a start date, there's an end date. It outlines how specifically that agent's going to get paid. Typically, we get paid at closing out of the seller's proceeds, where the listing agent co-brokes with a buyer's agent, and the listing agent offers that cooperative compensation. So with the new changes, the buyer goes into it up front knowing seller may or may not offer compensation.
So I think that brings up a lot of concern for our buyers, because a bunch of people, they see this legally binding contract in their head, they're like, how am I going to afford to have a down payment on this house, pay for my closing cost, and then on top of that have to pay 2.5%, 3% insert amount for an agent to represent me? So can you kind of set some ease and kind of explain that a little bit more?
Sure. When you sign the Buyer's Brokerage Agreement with your agent, you're going to outline up front what that agent's going to get paid. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're paying the full amount, because a lot of times the sellers are going to offer compensation for the buyer's agent, and that agent will work with the listing agent on that cooperative compensation amount. So because an agent does not work for free, they have to get paid from somewhere. But this just outlines up front that the buyer understands if there's not a cooperative compensation being offered from a seller, then that amount has to come from somewhere.
Yeah, and it's our job as agents to know, before you even go look at this house, you're going to know whether these sellers are offering compensation or whether they're not. And it's something you can always negotiate. You can fall in love with this house. The sellers could not be offering compensation, and you can still negotiate that into the deal if need be.
Absolutely. We're always going to ask for it. We may not always get it, but those agreements are always negotiable. That's the main thing going into this, is that we have to just have that up front. We cannot open a door. We cannot show a house without having this agreement signed. It is mandatory. We are required by the National Association of Realtors to do so. So buyers are just going to have to expect that whenever they call on a property, that if they are not currently working with that agent, that they're going to have to sit down and have that conversation and know a little bit more about how the process works. which is the basis behind the whole settlement to begin with, is just more transparency on how we get paid. And when they're buying a house, how does that look for them on their end?
Yeah, so how does this directly affect how you yourself are running your business and doing your business?
Well, it's caused us, not only me, but all of us, to kind of slow our roll. And when a buyer calls now, we don't just readily be able to run out the door. We have to just bring them in and have that conversation up front. They're not used to that. They're used to calling and getting whatever agent answers the phone, or driving by a house, calling on a sign, and expecting someone to just show up immediately. And that's not how we operate anyway. And unfortunately, we live in this society now where we all want it right now. When we call, we want it right now. If you're not available, we're just going to call the next person. The next person is going to be required to do the exact same thing. So just be understanding. A buyer just really needs to understand that we have to ask those questions up front. When we're asking them, it's not to frustrate them.
Be nosy.
Yeah, it's to figure out, are they actually working with another agent? Because a lot of times they are.
I personally feel like these buyer brokerage agreements are going to set the bar a little bit higher, and it's going to require a little bit more commitment. So we, as real estate agents, we know that our buyers realtor hop. We don't like to admit it, but it happens.
Sure.
Everyone has those occurrences. So Stephanie, how do you feel like this is going to affect that? How is it going to help them commit to an agent?
It's absolutely going to create more loyalty out there, because folks just are not loyal these days. So they need to just, it's okay, shop around, shop agents, figure out which agent best fits you and your needs, which agent's going to be most compatible to you, because personalities don't always mesh.
Exactly.
So find an agent that understands you, understands your needs, and that works well together with you.
I also believe this is going to help our open houses a lot. Recently, our open houses have been kind of low, but can you kind of explain how this is going to help our open houses as real estate agents?
Sure, absolutely. So if you just call me on my sign or call me on a property, I'm required to sit down and have that conversation with you about that buyer's brokerage agreement. Get that signed up front before I even open the door for you. However, when we're having open houses, that's not the case. We're representing our seller at those open houses. So a buyer who walks in, I can give you my information sheet, I can discuss that house with you, and I'm not bound, or you're not bound to pay me, because I'm not expecting compensation from you when you come to my open house. I'm not performing or providing a service for you specifically. So that allows buyers to kind of hit those open houses if they're just getting into the process of, we're just starting our search, we're not working with another agent, and it just, that doesn't cost them anything. But again, those buyer's brokerage agreements, those are negotiable, whether that agent just shows up and it's specific, you specifically sign it to go look at that one property, or you're gonna sign it for 30 days, or a zip code, or there's just all sorts of ways that buyer's brokerage agreement can be negotiated.
So overall, this is an agreement between our buyers and our agents. This agreement outlines pretty much how we're going to get paid and where this money is going from. It's going to show a sense of loyalty between our agents and our buyers. And don't forget, we are always here to answer any questions for you. Just give one of us a call directly, or even call our office. There's always someone here that's happy to help. Also, don't forget, everything's negotiable. Well, anyway, Stephanie, thank you so much for shedding some light on this topic. And also, thank you to our listeners. If y'all have any questions, don't hesitate to give us a call. We're always happy to help.